All right, everybody, welcome to today's webinar. We're going to get started. My name is McKay Allen. I am a marketing manager at Log My Calls, and we're really excited you're here today. Before we get started, I just want to give you some sort of a sense of the lay of the land, who I am, who Log My Calls is, before we turn it over to Marvin for his presentation today. So Log My Calls is a call tracking and call analytics solution. Helps marketers who are doing retargeting, who are doing PPC ads on Google, for example, who are doing regular SEO and other types of marketing, which campaigns, ads, keywords, etc., produce phone calls and which don't. And then we also actually determine lead quality of those calls, so whether or not they're good calls, bad calls, sales-ready calls, non-sales-ready calls, etc. And we started hosting webinars about 10 months ago. We started to bring in some of the best marketing experts around the country and around the world, really. And it's been a really great tool, both for us, our webinar partners, as well as the people who are attending the webinar. The content is really good. We don't try to sell you stuff. It's good information, and it'll help you market more efficiently and save money and make more money because your marketing is better. So that's sort of the idea. A couple of quick house cleaning items. First, if you have questions, just type those into the question bar and you go to webinar screen there, and I will read those to Marvin as is appropriate during the webinar. If they're about something specific in his presentation, I will just sort of interrupt him and read the question to him, and he can address it. And then we'll also have an extended Q&A period at the end as well. The other point of announcement is the webinar is being recorded. So you will get an email tomorrow morning that has the webinar recording attached to it. And then we encourage you to share that with people. Email it around in your company, and then share it on social media as well. The other thing to point out is that all of our webinars, we've done about 80 so far. All the recordings are available on logmycalls.com/webinar. If you go to that page, you can see our upcoming webinars, and you can also find the recording for this webinar and all of our past webinars there. So it's a great resource. You don't have to fill out any forms or anything to listen to the past webinars. It's just there for you. Listen to it and use it. So with that, I do want to introduce Marvin Benedict with ReTargeter. He's the Director of Agency Partnerships with ReTargeter. He has 3 years of account management experience and has a lot of knowledge with retargeting campaigns, some of ReTargeter's highest profile clients. His real expertise, though, lies in campaign optimization, bidding strategies, and impact management. So his goal and ReTargeter's goal is really just making sure that your campaigns always result in a positive ROI. That's the whole idea. They are based in San Francisco. So he is, it sounds like he's quite a connoisseur of the many food places in San Francisco. So maybe he can give us the best places when we all go there on trips or whatever to eat. So with that, I want to turn over to Marvin, who will give us a little bit of background on ReTargeter and then launch into his presentation. And as we said, everybody, if you have questions, type those in. I'll address them to Marvin as they come through. Marvin, go ahead, sir.
All right, thanks. Well, appreciate that the nice intro. It's a pleasure to kind of virtually meet everyone. It's always interesting giving a webinar where I kind of feel like I'm talking to myself in the back room of our office. But it's a pleasure to meet everyone, and I'm pretty excited about having the opportunity to be able to talk to you guys about something that I'm kind of passionate about, which is account management. It's a rather ambiguous term across the industry. Account management can mean a lot of things. For ReTargeter, account management it's very data focused. And a lot of this presentation is going to focus on, the first part about the macro level of what retargeting is, how it works for marketers, how kind of is set up, and then the latter end is going to be a little bit more technical. We'll try and keep it as simple as possible, but there are a lot of really cool little tips and tricks that you can do for a campaign that allow it to be more applicable in the future for you. So I'll a little bit about ReTargeter. We've been around for about 4 years. We were one of the first companies to really offer retargeting to a greater user base. People who didn't have $100,000 a month to work with campaigns. We came into the space when real-time bidding was really starting to explode. So we've been around for a long time, and we're pretty good at being able to get the finer points of everything down. So I'm going to talk about all that jazz today. Feel free to type in any questions at any time with things that I'm going over. I always want to make sure that we're as specific as possible and get you the information that you need. So let's move right along. All right, so what we'll be talking about today is a quick overhaul, kind of like a TOC here. Retargeting, what it is, how it works, and most importantly, how to make it better. I think a lot of you will probably have a good idea of what retargeting is on the surface, but from an account management standpoint, again, how to make it better is the name of the game. For us, I can say all of our salespeople kind of promise the world to a lot of people, and as an account manager, we need to go and actually make sure that comes through. So we'll talk about some of the tips and tricks there. Who is your audience? That's a big point of really marketing in general. Is what is your audience? Who is your audience? How are they responding to everything? And how can we go through and work with that audience to make sure that we're providing something that they want and that they need? What is the right messaging? In any marketing campaign, it's all about the messaging. Technology can only take you so far, but the messaging is sort of the thing that forces that horse to drink the water. So we'll talk about that a little bit. How long will your campaign run? Something that's kind of funny that we don't necessarily talk about all that much is flight dates for a campaign. Now I'll talk about this later on in some of the slides, but you're going to want to have an idea of how long your campaign's running so that we know, and that any vendor is going to know, hey, when can we implement certain optimizations based on how much data we'll be able to gather by a certain point in time. So talk about that, and then how does bidding and optimization work? That's kind of, for me, that's the name of the game. A lot of people think of retargeting as sort of set it and forget it. I don't think about it like that, and there's a lot of reasons for that, so we'll get into all that good stuff as we move along. All right. What is retargeting? This is a good place to start. So for those of you that are knowledgeable, I just want to give a sort of a macro level of what retargeting is and how it works with marketers. So it allows you to focus your ads on people who have visited your site but left without converting. If we had everyone converting every time they went to the site, retargeting wouldn't be a product, and we'd probably all be pretty wealthy. So not necessarily working now, so we're providing that service, and a number of people are providing that service to help bring these users back. So using our little people here, potential customers come to your site, poke around, investigate, see, hey, do they have low prices? Do they have the right ebook I'm looking for? Whatever it is. And then, like most people do, they leave your site. It could be, they want to search around, find a competitor, see if it's cheaper. If their kid spills milk everywhere, they just stop paying attention to the site. They have to go pick everything up. Or in this case, our little people decide to go play soccer. Even though I think football for the U.S. might be a little bit more appropriate now. At that point, after they leave your site, they come back, surf the web at some other point in time. Our technology allows, and real-time bidding allows, for an ad to be placed on other websites that these users may be going to. So, hypothetically, they come to, yourmarketingsite.com. They come back, they're searching the New York Times to find some news articles. You have the ability to put an ad for your website on the New York Times as these users surf around. Now, the idea being that these users will see this ad and they'll be able to say, hey, I remember going to this site, something came up, I had to do something else, I want to check out, maybe they have a deal, maybe something's changed, let's go back and let's see what this is all about. So you click your ad, that ad will bring them back to your site, and then at that point you have another chance to try and convert those users. Now you've already have this sort of psychological trigger where they've had an interaction with your site and sort of what you're selling, what you're trying to get them to do in terms of conversion. So getting them back to that site in order to further that process is is really big in the eyes of pretty much all marketers that I've talked to. So hopefully at this point they convert, download the ebook, download a webinar, whatever it is, and that's essentially what retargeting, the technology as a whole, allows you to do. Let's move along. So getting started with retargeting, going back to that graph, or that the little people playing soccer that we just showed you, it's all about the performance of what this is going to do, getting that ROI up, getting whatever you deem a conversion to happen. So showing the right ads to the right people is the name of the game. Typically I like to say that you want to show the right ads to the right people at the right point in time. So performance in having these ads in front of folks when it's appropriate is the name of the game. So bringing users back just some basic statistics on user behavior across the web. Over 95% of users who leave websites without converting, and over 72% of users abandon their shopping carts. That's a lot. In reality, that's a lot of wasted money. You're driving these users to your website, and if 95% of them are leaving, that's and whether you're paying for an AdWords scenario, you're spending a lot on SEO, whatever it is, you're leaving a lot of money on the table by driving those users and then not doing anything with them or not trying to engage with them again. And almost all the times that I talk to people, retargeting is a lot cheaper of a solution than driving all new users, in terms of time invested in finding those new users and then actually, spending money on things like AdWords and that sort of stuff. So, and not just coming back to your website, but the shopping cart stuff, we will talk about that in a full slide later on in the webinar. That's obviously a pretty important part of bringing users back if they've made it all the way to your shopping cart. And now we have reach and brand awareness. So repeated impressions look bigger online. And one cool thing about retargeting is it sort of takes away the idea that TV has kind of put in everyone's mind, where if you're buying a Super Bowl spot, oh man, this brand spent $2 million on this spot. They're obviously either doing something right that they have $2 million to spend on a 30-second spot, or they're absolutely massive. So digital space is a little different. To use the New York Times example, I know for us, for example, and I think for a lot of vendors that you would work with, they have access to the New York Times. So it's a very reputable website. It's something that everyone would like to be on. And so when you start having your brand showing up, no matter if you're spending $10 on retargeting or $100,000 on retargeting, having your brand show up on sites like that, it goes a long way to building that sort of social proof that you guys know what you're doing. All right, moving along. Setup. So this is where it starts to get a little interesting. So, my biggest thing as an account manager, working with our sales team, working with our agency partners, everything along those lines, is have a strategy conversation with your provider. Now, retargeting has typically been thought of as you set it and forget it. You put the pixel on your site, you capture the audience, and you serve them ads. That's not necessarily the case. You have your own marketing strategy, and you should be going with providers who are willing to fit into that, because retargeting is a very customizable product. So a couple things to ask yourself when you're going through the campaign setup, and to ask your account manager, your sales executive, whoever it is that you're working with, is, I want to start a retargeting campaign because why? You gotta have a reason. If you're going to spend money on it, your boss is going to want to know why you're spending money on it. So you want to think, I'm trying to drive ebook downloads. I'm trying to convert users on my e-commerce site. Whatever it is, you want to have a reason for starting this campaign, and you really want to know what you want to get out of it. So without that, it's from a campaign setup perspective, it's very difficult. And then just for you personally, you want to know that stuff. So what is the right message for your creative? So if you have a direct ad buy campaign where you're just buying a bunch of ads across the web, the messaging is going to be very different than having a retargeting campaign. A retargeting campaign is different because these people already know what your site is about. They've already been to your site. So therefore, you want to have a customizable message in there that's unique to these people already having an understanding of what you're offering them. So just a quick overview of that. Where on your site do you want to capture your audience? Once again, capturing your audience is the name of the game in marketing. For TV, it's share of voice. For digital, it could be share of voice as well. But just having that ability to say, hey, how are we going to serve ads to this particular audience, and where do we get them from? How long do you want your campaign to run? Once again, touching on this because it is very important. A couple nifty things in here we have are frequency. What's the frequency of the ads that you want to serve? If someone is trying to buy a car, you probably don't want to bombard them with ads, but you do want to have a steady trickle of ads over a long period of time. And that's versus, say, a CPG product where someone goes and looks at it, and you probably want to serve more ads right away because that's an easier purchase for people to make. Targeting networks. you want to make sure that you are targeting the right ad networks. Each network is different. They all have their own pluses and minuses. So you want to make sure you're not just wasting impressions there. Day parting, if you are targeting people at work, you're probably not going to want to serve ads at a certain point in the day. If you're targeting specific demographics, they have their own browsing patterns. So all of this, having a conversation with your provider, they can help provide some of the insight that they've seen from working with campaigns, and it's something that you should expect. And lastly, the most important thing is how do you define a conversion? What is a conversion to you? From an account management standpoint, this is more important than anything else that's out there. You want to make sure that you have a perfect idea of what your campaign is going to be and what you want the end game to be, because that's how our optimization tactics work. It's how we sort of think about the campaign over its lifetime. So we'll get into that a little bit more down the road, but it's sort of a setup for the campaign itself and some things to start thinking about as you are choosing which vendors to go with and what you want out of the campaign. All right, pixel placement. For those of you that may not know, a pixel is essentially a line of HTML code that will drop a cookie. And a cookie being just a unique identifying number, completely anonymous, no personally identifiable information at all in it. But what it does is the pixel just drops a cookie on a user's browser when they come in contact with it. Just a quick overview of that. But making sure you pixel the right users is obviously very important. You want to make sure that the people that you're serving ads to are the people that are in this particular pixel pool. Excuse me. Where are you segmenting your website? Now, use e-commerce, for example, because that's kind of the easiest one to give an example of. But if you have a bunch of users coming to your e-commerce site, you're selling men's shoes and women's shoes, you don't want to be serving ads to the men's shoes audience for women's shoes. It's kind of a waste at that point. It's not what they looked at. It's not what they're interested in. It's just, it's kind of a waste of money at that point. So you want to say, okay, I want to pixel users that are coming to my site that fall under the women's category. I want to pixel users separately that come to my site that fall under the men's category. Is this true of anything that you have? Is different product pages, different offers, content downloads, blogs, careers, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you're serving the appropriate message to the user who made it to that specific part of your site. So putting different pixels on different parts of the site allows you to do that. Who is your message geared towards? You want to align your message with where a user lies in the purchase funnel. Now, this is very similar to having the pixel on certain parts of the website, back to the product pages, offers, content downloads, all that good stuff. So, the messaging that you have for people that are in the shopping cart could be very different than having them sign up for your email newsletter. To use the e-commerce example again, if someone comes and puts 3 pairs of shoes in their shopping cart and then leaves for a week, it might be a useful thing to have some creatives that say, hey, 5% off the shoes in your shopping cart, redeem now. That's very important to a lot of people. But what you absolutely wouldn't want to do is say, hey, we have an email newsletter right now that you can sign up for and you'll get it when you have someone who's already put in their shopping cart information, products in there. So you want to make sure the messaging that you're sending through the creatives is geared specifically towards the users who've made it to certain parts of your site. And then lastly, when will you stop serving impressions? It's kind of a big thing. I think we've all kind of seen, been to Zappos, bought a pair of shoes. For the next 3 years of your life, you're still seeing Zappos ads. While that may have some beneficial reasons for them, we like to think of it as, hey, at some point in time, we're going to want to stop serving particular ads to particular users. If there's shopping cart ads that people have, we can put a burn code on there that says, okay, this person's made to the shopping cart. They converted via click through our banners. Now let's burn them from that particular pixel, meaning that they won't see those shopping cart campaigns anymore. But let's put them in the email pixel so that they start seeing creatives that say sign up for our email deals list or anything like that. So it's always important to say, hey, when do I want to stop showing impressions to this particular user? Moving along. Ad buys and optimization.
Hey, Marvin. Sorry to interrupt you. We got a couple good questions on impression retargeting specifically. So you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying that you can show someone who's been to maybe the shopping cart page a different retargeting ad than someone who's maybe just been to your website generally. Is that
Yep.
accurate?
Yep.
Okay.
And
So then the follow-up from that is, yeah, go ahead.
there's actually a slide at the end. It's something called Boolean logic. There's a slide at the end that'll go through the process on how to actually do that. But
Okay.
it gets a little more in depth. But yeah, that's a great question. But yeah, carry on. You had more parts to it.
Yeah. So the question that we're getting is, do you recommend doing retargeting just on impressions, or do you think it is more useful to retarget maybe just those that reached your pricing page or your shopping cart page or whatever interior page you want them to? Or is it best to have a very broad sort of impression-based campaign? What would your recommendations be there? What do you see in terms of conversions for just impressions versus arriving on a certain page?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, my idea is, and what we've kind of seen from looking at years worth of data is obviously the people who've made it deeper down that sales funnel are going to be more likely to convert. People who have made it to the pricing page, made it to the shopping cart, they're going to be converting at a higher level because they've already taken an initial user action to get there. I don't, for what the price of retargeting is and how cheap it is in contrast to a lot of other marketing strategies, I always want to have a pixel on the home page because I think that's a very valuable user base. But I always also want to separate both of those out. So, if I were to set up a perfect campaign and I had the budget to do so, I would want to have the homepage pixel up there, use that as a separate campaign, and then have another pixel on sort of a pricing page to be able to engage with those users with a different message. And that different message is pretty important because it allows people to remember exactly what they were doing on the site. If budgets are a little bit tighter and people are trying to get very defined with the campaign, then having just the pricing page would be more beneficial than having just the home page, because then you'd be able to save a little money. You'd be able to reach users who are a little bit further down that purchase funnel.
That's great. Okay, keep going, and there's a couple others, but I think they may be more appropriate a little bit later. So yeah, keep on going for now, Marvin.
Okay.
Great job.
Yeah, and whoever asked that question, thank you for asking it. And if you want a little bit more in-depth answer, type it into the questions box, and I'll go over it at the end as well. I think the Boolean logic stuff will be really helpful for that. Ad buys. So a direct ad buy is essentially a way, this is, just to be clear, this is different from retargeting, but an ad buy is a way for you to go out and say, hey, I want to bring more people to my website. How can I do that? It's a way to find people's interests and then say, hey, I have a product that fits within your interests. Come to my site. So there's two different ways to do this, and this is something you always want to clarify with your provider on which way is going to be specifically best for you. I can't stress that enough. So an audience buy. There are companies out there, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of them, Xlit, Bluekai, Lotame, Bizzo, who have created these huge segment pools of users contingent on their browsing patterns. So say I'm very interested in Mini Coopers, for example. I go to autotrader.com, look for Mini Coopers. I go to someone's blog who all they do is blog about Mini Coopers. I look at specific sites to that type of car. These data companies are putting these different points of data together to say, oh, Marvin went to these 4 sites all in relation to this one product. Therefore, he's probably interested in it. So we're going to put him in the Mini Cooper data segment. And so that's essentially what an audience buy is. You're buying the ability to reach users who have shown expressed interest or intent in a particular product or just interest in general. And there's audience segments for just about anything. Cruise ships, fantasy football, cars, marketing, CEOs of companies that have 20 to 40 employees. If you have an idea, something you want to target, there's definitely going to be a way to blend all these segments together to find that. We had a client that was doing, this kind of bleeds into the next thing with A/B testing and knowing your audience. We had a client that was doing dance shows in New York. They were doing ballet, theater, that sort of stuff. So the way that we kind of set up the audience buy and how a lot of providers should due to the fact that there are so many segments for this, is we set up 4 different campaigns for the first week of the actual campaign. In each one of those, we blended together a bunch of different segments that were all relatively the same but had unique aspects to them. And we ran all 4 of those campaigns at the same time for the first week. Now, what we wanted to see is, okay, which audience is going to respond best to this particular client's creatives. So after running that for a week, we say, okay, campaign number 3 had a higher CTR, higher conversions, and outperformed all the other campaigns. Let's shut off those other campaigns and let's allocate all of the spend to the audience that we put together in test number 3. So from a data standpoint, you always want to make sure that you're not just setting up a campaign and just hoping that it works. You want to set yourself up for success. You want to make sure that you have a number of different variables that you're testing, and each one of those needs to have something in it that makes it different than the next. So this all kind of boils down to knowing your audience, and comes back to a couple slides ago when I said, hey, you need to have a conversation with your provider about all this stuff. There's no one who's going to know your audience more on that first call than yourself. These people, the vendors that you're working with, have a very good idea of what the marketplace trends are, but you know your audience. And so the more you can share about that, the more likely you're going to have success with an audience buy or just any ad buy if you share that information. So don't bogart that. It's useful stuff. Contextual buy. This is essentially how ad buys have gone in the past. You're pretty much buying ads on networks of sites that are directly related to whatever the interest is. So if I'm interested in yachting, we're in San Francisco, there's yachts all over the place for America's Cup. So say you're interested in buying a yacht now that you saw these guys floating around the bay. So I could go and visit a bunch of different yachting websites that are all within an overarching yachting network. Now we have the idea, or we have the ability, where we can go and buy impressions on that yachting network, so that people like me, when America's Cup comes here and I have all my millions to buy huge yachts, I can go and hopefully click through and purchase. I don't know if you can purchase a yacht on the internet, but I could get started. So contextual buys are essentially the ability to buy ad real estate on sites that are directly related to whatever the advertiser is selling. And same sort of theories apply here in testing multiple ones. You're going to want to be able to say, hey, A/B test these networks, and let's see which ones perform the best, and let's see which ones haven't been quite as high performing as the other. Let's allocate the spend appropriately. And at the bottom, like I said before, talk to your provider. They've done this before, hopefully. If it's the first time they have, then that's a whole other can of worms. Optimization metrics overview. So just a quick overview of different optimization metrics that we have and that the industry really has. What is your goal for the campaign? Super important. If we don't know the goal, if your vendor doesn't know the goal, it's kind of just shooting in the dark, and it's never good. Do you want to drive clicks on a CPC basis? Do you want to drive conversions on a CPA basis? Or do you want to use a CPM model to drive clicks and conversions? Network optimization is essentially the optimization on a network level, where you'll go in and say, hey, this network's performing, this other network's not performing to the level that we want. Let's allocate more spend appropriately. Bidding optimization is the ability to see the most efficient way for you to bid on inventory. Now, everyone's audience is going to be different, and everyone has different browsing patterns, that sort of thing. Bidding optimization is really a way for us to win more impressions that are more quality to your audience, and hopefully cheaper, win them cheaper. So we'll get into all that in the next couple slides, but that's a brief overview. First off, kind of scale back a little bit and take a macro look at what real-time bidding is. It's just RTB for short. Is an auction for the buying and selling of ad impressions in real time. We can, I don't know if it's for other companies. I know for us, we buy billions and billions of ads, and the only way we can do that is if we have the infrastructure in the back end to be able to do that in an efficient manner. And real-time bidding was kind of born out of that idea of how can we be more efficient about selling this inventory, and then how can we be more efficient about buying it as well. So how it works, sellers, publishers, websites like ESPN make their inventory available for buyers, advertisers like yourselves to bid on. It kind of, real-time bidding as a whole, it kind of started as something that people would sell their leftover inventory to, and now that people are kind of seeing how easy it is to set their sites up and how much money they can really make if they open up all of their inventory, they're starting to say, hey, this is a much easier way to make money on the internet for us. So you start seeing companies like News Corp, for example, opening up their network of sites. You see, Fox, almost all local news sites, New York Times, all these huge publishers that used to be, only just publisher networks are now opening up for real time, and it's a pretty exciting space to be in. It's something where I can wake up every day and see a different high premium publisher have real-time bidding enabled on their site now. So real-time bidding allows for the customization of campaigns that used to only be available to big-time publishers with deep pockets. Now, with a retargeting campaign, you can customize 100 different things. That didn't used to be available to companies like ourselves. It didn't used to be available, especially to marketers. Unless you wanted to pay $100 CPM for something, you didn't get to do any day parting. You didn't get to pick which geography you were on. Now, all of that customization has been built into platforms, and you're able to do that. You can do it at scale, which is the name of the game as well. So the current state of RTB, not to toot our own horn, but it is complex. It is something that we would like it to be a little bit simpler, but with the state of everything right now, it's not. So that's why we spend a tremendous amount of time and energy training our account managers and that sort of jazz to understand exactly what RTB is and how to use it. Even the bidding algorithms. There's right now on our platform, I believe we have 16 different ones. There's a reason why each one was created, and you got to know when to use it. So the complexity is there, and it's something that's being worked through to kind of simplify it. Inventory. Real-time bidding was born out of inventory that wasn't sold from direct sales teams. Because of that, it was kind of, some of the inventory wasn't as high quality as it is nowadays. And so it got kind of a bad rep in the beginning. The term remnant was thrown out a lot. Now it's kind of shifted over. It used to be, oh, I have this much inventory that's available. I can reach these many websites, or this many websites, but that's not really the name of the game anymore. It's the race for premium. You want to say, I have access to these premium sites because of the relationships that my particular company has with these networks. So you started to see that start about a year ago. The conversations are no longer, hey, I have X amount of inventory available across the globe. It's, hey, I have premium inventory via ComScore, whatever it is that's making the assessment of that premium inventory. But it's sort of a race there, and the company that can get there fastest is going to be the one that's going to be the best to work with. All right, CPM. Once again, a little bit macro. Real-time bidding typically runs on a CPM model, or cost per million impressions. It's cost per thousand. CPM is the cost an advertiser pays for 1,000 impressions of an ad. Why does retargeting work best on a CPM model? Now, this is something that probably every other call that I'm on, someone asks, why is a CPM the most efficient way to do this? And part of that I think is used, comes from people doing AdWords and those sort of things where they say, hey, I'm used to working on a CPC. Now, if you were to come to me and you were to say, I need 1,000 clicks for my campaign, there are vendors out there who can get you 1,000 clicks. We can go and get you 1,000 clicks if you want. But the name of the game for us with 99% of our clients is conversions. And clicks on the real-time bidding basis don't necessarily mean conversions. We've ran campaigns where we ran on even 10-cent inventory. That 10-cent inventory got a ton of clicks, but it doesn't convert because it's not good inventory. So you want to be able to work on an inventory scale that has quality to it in order to drive those conversions. That's something that people, and I think it's kind of like the race for premium. So a lot of people took a race to the bottom to say, hey, we have 10 cent, 20 cent, 30 cent, dollar inventory, whatever it is, and people think, oh, I'm getting a better value for this, but you're not. In the real-time bidding space, it's not always cheaper is better, and you can see that over and over again with campaigns that you run. Clicks aren't what they used to be. We just spoke about that. Ability to gather data quickly, thus enabling faster optimization. When working on a CPM model, the great thing for us is that we can gather impression data very quickly. It allows us to go out, buy a bunch of impressions in the first couple days of the campaign, obviously contingent on the flight, and then optimize based on that on the fly. So that's something that's very helpful for us. And kind of in what I was saying before with the Google AdWords stuff, display ads are not text ads and shouldn't be measured as such. It's a different type of product, and it has a more efficient way of working with that CPM model. Network optimization. So this and bidding optimization are huge. It's something that I think our account managers probably spend the most amount of time on once the campaign's up and running. So you want to be able to analyze the efficacy of a network over time, looking at data on a network by network basis. Essentially what this is say you have a campaign that's running for 2 weeks. It's obviously going to be running on a number of different networks, depending on where your user base goes. If we're running for that 2 weeks and you have network A, or say the Google long tail for telecommunications, and you're selling shoes, that's probably not going to get very many clicks or very many conversions. So we're going to go in there in the first place and just go ahead and take that out. Now, once the campaign has been running for that 2 weeks, we can go back in there and say, okay, we thought this network was going to perform at a high level, but it's not. We're seeing that network C is performing the best. Let's go and allocate the spend that we had for certain networks and put them on a different one. The ones that are being proven to drive clicks, being proven to drive conversions, and let's make sure that we're spending our money in the best places possible. Now, the only way you can do that is by having data to work with. And so that's why the first couple of weeks of a campaign and through the long tail aspects of a campaign, it's important to continue looking at networks to say, hey, this one's performing well, this one's not. Testing things out and making sure that you're finding that sort of sweet spot for conversions. Different audiences will respond better to different publisher networks. That's exactly right. If you have, in the example here is Glam Media, is a network generated towards women, so this is not an optimal choice for an advertiser looking to target males. As much as I would like to think that guys are going on Glam Network to buy a bunch of stuff for their wives, girlfriends, anything like that, it's probably not going to happen. So you want to make sure that you're on the right network serving the right ads, and doing the network optimizations is a great way to be able to do that. As it stands right now, that's something that you do manually for the most part, so it is important to talk to your account manager with whoever you're working with to make sure that you guys are both on the same page on the network optimization stuff. Bidding optimization, how are your users browsing the web? It's something that you can only know once it's started. So you get a couple weeks of data, you understand the bidding optimization or bidding structure of how these users are browsing the web. From there you can do a number of different things. Where are you seeing conversions happen? You want to, just like the network optimization, you want to have an understanding of where are these conversions happening and what is the target CPM for these conversions. So you can optimize towards that target CPM to say, we're seeing users convert at 263. Okay, that's great. That means sites that are within that range are going to be sites that people are more likely to convert on. If that's what the data shows, then you can work with that. How much is it costing you to serve impressions on that inventory? Like I just said, you want to make sure that you're selling or buying impressions at the appropriate CPM level. How much are you paying for conversions on a CPM basis? If you find that you're paying an extraordinarily high CPM for conversions, there's ways to go about buying impressions at a cheaper margin in order to get those same impressions. So one sort of interesting thing to do, and something that I like the most out of this, something called estimated clearing price. Use the word nifty here because that's a nifty word. A nifty trick that allows us to be able to determine the most efficient way to buy impressions on your behalf. Now imagine you're bidding for something on eBay against someone. Now you come up against this person 3 or 4 times. They always beat you on the bid, and you're getting pretty sick of it. if you had an estimated clearing price algorithm, what that would do is say, this person is typically doing this type of bidding. They're saying, oh, they're going to go up $10 on this product, and then they're going to, after that, you put in another $10 bid, and they go up $11, whatever it is. Estimated clearing price actually keeps a record on publishers' inventory in order to say, hey, this particular ad unit usually sells for X CPM. And we can go in there and record that. So next time we go to put in a bid, say we have a baseline bid set of $3 for the campaign, and people go in and we're just bidding $3 each time, there could be a chance for us to get that inventory at $2.50 sometimes. And what estimated clearing price will do is give us a better idea of bidding maybe just 1 cent over that estimated clearing price in order to win more impressions for cheaper. And that saves you money over time. So focus your budget on the people who are most likely to convert. That makes perfect sense. Viewability. This is something I'm pretty high on. It's kind of a new thing. Viewability being how long. I think that the metric is at least 1 second of viewability on a web page, but how long someone actually saw the ad for. So if you log on to a website and there's an ad at the very top, you're going to see it, but there's also ads at the very bottom that you're probably not going to see, because really, who scrolls all the way down to a web page nowadays? It's like going to the second page on Google. It's just not going to happen. So an example of this, kind of put together, sorry for it's a little grainy here, but I had to import it from Excel to make it make sense. But imagine you have a CPM of a vendor that's 250, and you have a CPM of a vendor that's 150. Now, the industry standard, according to Double Verify, we ran a test on our own inventory on this, a rather extensive one actually, but according to them, the viewability rate for standard RTB is 40%, which is not very high. The inventory that we ran, or the test that we ran, came in at 78%. So imagine if you spent $10,000 for both these campaigns, all things considered. The impressions purchased at $1.50 is going to be 2.6 million more than what you purchased at $2.50. You can see the numbers right there. But if you apply the viewability percentage to each one of these, you can see that more people are going to see your ad at the 250 CPM by almost 500,000 than at the 40% or the 150 CPM. So I think that it kind of just sells itself at that point. Just because someone's coming to you and saying, hey, we have a $1.50 CPM, we're cheaper than everyone else, that's great. There's a reason that people are cheaper. If you buy a $30,000 car, you're going to get more than if you buy a car that's $500 off Craigslist, which is actually how I bought my first car. So I know that to be true. So moving along, that's something just to consider. It's viewability is super interesting. It's something to look into if it's something that you don't know too much about, but I'm a big fan of it, and the folks over at Double Verify are great to work with as well. Utilizing Boolean logic. Now, this is the person who asked the question before, so I'm glad we got to this slide. So there's methods for organizing your campaigns to maximize returns, and it's all based on showing the right impression at the right time to the right user. So Boolean logic allows us to set if and then logic into a campaign. Another word for this is conditional logic, for those of you that are philosophy majors out there. The Boolean setup, let's go through a couple examples here. I think that'll probably make it easiest to understand. So if a user makes it to the shopping cart, then show them the creative with the last product they added. So that sort of if-then right there, it's a way in our system to say, if a user does this behavior, then we want to do this behavior on our behalf. So if a user makes it to your pricing page, then show them the creative with an offer for 5% off. So by working together with your provider and telling them what types of message you want to show at certain points in your site, you can set these Boolean logic parameters in order to say, hey, this is when this person should see this particular ad. And there are pixels that need to be placed for this, but the actual logic portion of that is something that most vendors will be able to do in their backend. So this is all about, once again, all about serving the right message to the right user at the right time. Chugging along. The importance of A/B tests. So this is important for anything. I think that making sure you only test one variable one time is super important. Otherwise you're not going to be able to see what's statistically significant, broken out between the variables. So Don't go haywire on independent and dependent variables. Make sure you have just one of each. Make sure you're testing it, and exercise patience here, because otherwise it's just going to be a waste of time. So, go big with each one of them, and if it needs to make a drastic change, that's how you kind of win, and go and discover what's going to be the best for your site. And you can't be timid in doing this sort of stuff. Don't quit. If there's room for improvement, there's room for testing. I was watching Mad Men a couple days ago, and I like that show. And one of the quotes was, "Hey, you're content with 50% of the marketplace, but we won't be content until we have 90%." That's it's very true of sort of a marketing thought process. Is you can always do better. That's what the internet was built for: efficiency, making things convert at higher rates. That's always a possibility. So set those goals and make sure they're measurable. Never get frustrated and just end something prematurely. You want to make sure that you have statistical significant information in order to work with. If you don't have that, then there is really no point in setting it up in the first place. You want to make sure that you give something the time to actually get something done. So, and then retargeting is most useful when the user experience is fluid. Retargeting is not something, if you're not doing any other marketing and you're just running retargeting, then you're going to want to think about doing multiple channel marketing at the same time. You want to have a bunch of different things going and have that user experience be really fluid, really smooth, so that the user actually is comfortable with whatever it is that you're trying to have as a conversion. And that's it. That's all I got. So happy to answer any questions, but I do appreciate you guys taking the time to stop in and listen. It's always nice to be able to do a webinar and be able to talk to people about this stuff. It's sort of a passion of mine. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to email me.
That's awesome. Marvin, good stuff, man. Let's get right to a few questions. We've got several. All right. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between B2B and B2C retargeting? Are there any different strategies, or is it just strictly a matter of content?
I think it's a matter of content. From what I've seen, we work a lot with agencies like DWA, for example. It does a lot of B2B stuff. It has to do also with how well you can capture the particular audience that you're doing. So I think even Alana has a couple things on this too. She does a lot of our content marketing on that front, so I think she can probably answer that question a little bit better too. So I'm gonna pop her on.
Hi everyone, I'm the marketing manager here at ReTargeter and just wanted to hop in and give you guys an answer on that. Obviously retail is the most common use case for retargeting, but it is incredibly effective for B2B, and some of the ways that we use it, we're a B2B company, and the way we've used it with clients is if you are running on a freemium model or a free trial or something like that, you can always be using retargeting to encourage people to move up the next level, to buy your premium product, to become a paid user, and you communicate the value in that way. We'll also use it. We run a strong content marketing strategy. We'll use it to get people to the next level. They came to our blog. Can we then show them ads to download a white paper? So like Marvin said in the presentation, you really have to know your audience. You have to understand where they are in the purchase cycle. You don't want to be showing someone who came to your blog creative for purchasing your enterprise level product. And so it's a little bit of a longer sales cycle, but it definitely builds brand awareness and keeps you top of mind while they're doing the research.
That's a good answer. And I can just speak to that too. We're a B2B company as well, and we've had good luck with retargeting in the B2B space. So I think it's a good tool if it's used well for both. Okay, here's a couple of other questions. How accurate is view-through as a conversion metric? Because I already visited the site and I may or may not be converting because I saw the ad.
Yeah,
does that make sense to you? Okay.
Yeah. So, attribution is obviously one of the biggest issues with with online marketing in the first place. So we try and alleviate some of those issues with view-throughs. I know companies like Google, for example, their view-through window is 30 days. If you can tell me a commercial that you saw 30 days ago, it's kind of difficult to be able to do. So for us, we like to take the 24-hour view-through window. So we'll say, hey, if we're serving a healthy amount of impressions to these users and they come back within that 24 hours, since the last time they saw that impression, it was actually viewed, then we're going to count that towards view-throughs. Now we have people who take percentages of that. We have people who take the whole thing, even large clients. But I think it really comes down to what kind of product you're selling is a big part of it. But being able to have that timeline be a lot shorter is something that a lot of people like on our end, and it's something that allows us to be more comfortable with saying, hey, this is something that we drove to the actual site. Is a conversion that can be attributed to us. We can also put in things on the conversion pixel like you can put in revenue trackers, customer ID trackers, that sort of thing, so you can go through your backend and try and do some attribution modeling there to say, hey, this person actually came in through an affiliate program we're running because their customer ID number was in there and they clicked through another banner. So there are certain ways that we can offer ways to attribute those view-through conversions, but for us the biggest thing is going to be that time frame.
Good job on that one. Okay, let's keep going here. How much data or time do you think a campaign needs to run before you can get statistically significant data? Is there a sample size that you say, okay, we've got enough data to make good decisions now moving forward?
Yep. I would say for one campaign, in order to have that statistically significant data, I would want probably around 100,000 impressions to work with. If I'm going through in one network that's only had 1,000 impressions serve on it, and they haven't gotten any clicks yet, or they've got one click, I still think that's a network that's worth serving on, and so I'm going to need more data to be able to make that decision. So typically between the 90 to 110,000 mark is when you start being able to have enough data to actually do something with that. It's something that personally we run into a lot. A lot of people say, hey, I've been running my campaign for a day, I want to optimize already. So well, that's actually not beneficial to the campaign if you don't have enough data to work with. So there is that sort of patience period there, but along with that, the more data you get, say you get up to 1 million impressions, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with that 1 million impressions, and there's a lot of information you have on the clearing prices of bids and that sort of thing that allow you to continue that upward trend in optimization.
Great. And then the last question. Talk to us a little bit about, there's always rumblings about legislation that would limit cookies or prevent cookies, and obviously that's critical to what you guys do as I understand it. Talk to us about that. Are there concerns in your industry for that reason? Just kind of give us the lay of the land there and convince us it's not a problem at the conclusion here.
Yeah, happily. So I mean, you're absolutely right. It is a big thing with see companies like Mozilla saying that they're going to do the do not track and that sort of stuff. It's on a lot of people's minds, even with a lot of the NSA stuff that's going on. People are saying, hey, I'm on the internet, this is a private place for me. And that's something that we obviously take very seriously, and the industry does too. It's kind of self-regulated itself to this point, and a lot of people see that as something that may not be the best, but I think it's done actually a phenomenal job. For all of our campaigns, there's unique identifying numbers that are done on a campaign level, so that there's, like, if you came to me and said, hey, I need to find this person who is part of a pixel pool of yours, here's $1 billion, I would try really hard, but I couldn't do it. And so I think that the space itself, with the complexity of the internet, it's an education problem. It's saying, hey, we don't know who you are. We can't track you the way that you think you're being tracked. We don't know that Marvin Benedict went to this website, was on this computer at this time. We don't know any of that. And so being able to go through, we have white papers on our site about this, and it's something that we do a lot of conversation about. But being able to educate people on exactly what's happening is really important. In cookie-based advertising in the first place is part of what's allowed for the internet to have so many free things. It allows for me to get all the content that I want, all the news sites I want, all that sort of jazz, and it allows for that sort of more targeted advertising. So I think the more that you can educate people on exactly how this process works and how this first-party data is being gathered and utilized, you're going to be able to have people be more comfortable with exactly what's going on. And additionally, first-party data is your data that you drove to your site, and it's people who've already showed that explicit interest in what you're selling, and that's what we're typically working with. Another interesting thing that I think people don't realize is there are a ton of parameters on what you can and can't show in terms of internet ads. So anything health related, anything obviously violence, gambling, those sort of things, but especially health related, you can't show any retargeted ads on those sort of things, which is rightfully so. If you have a physical ailment or anything like that, and you don't want a family member knowing about it, someone that's using the same computer, there is very staunch regulation on that sort of stuff, so that you don't have to have that conversation until you're ready to have it. So I think a lot of people are kind of quick to hop on that privacy bandwagon, but there's a ton of privacy built into the system as it stands right now.
Good stuff. Good information.
I would encourage some people, if you are interested in this sort of stuff, we do have a very well done white paper on our blog on privacy, the EU cookie directive, all that stuff. So if you just type privacy into the search bar, you'll be able to get it, and it's super useful.
Great. Great. Well, that's awesome information. And as I said, everything that we've got clients who use ReTargeter, and we've done retargeting, and it does work. I mean, it's a great way to sort of build awareness, number one, but then number two, and more importantly, it's a great way to get people back to your site and back to the pages you want them to go to. So it's a fantastic way. We've had clients convert to clients from retargeting, and it's awesome. So with that, everybody, we'll conclude. Marvin, thanks again for doing it. We really appreciate it. And everybody, thank you for showing up today. We appreciate it as well. So hope you enjoyed it. As I said, this webinar was recorded. We will send it out to you tomorrow morning. So pay attention and watch that. And share it online, share it on social media, share it within your organizations as well. So thanks again, Marvin. Any last thoughts?
Nope. Thanks, everyone, for coming. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'm pretty good at email, so I'll get back to you pretty quickly. So thank you very much.
Awesome. He's going to put that on his resume in future years. Really good at email. It's going to be great. Good at email. That's awesome. Marvin, thanks. Have a good day, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Pleasure.